Ooh, 3:30 in the morning, not a soul in sight. Puppy scratching in the background when I'm going on live. Hey, welcome to Growing Up the Wilds of Suburbia. This is your host, Chad Everett Brochures. I've got my special guest, Athena Brochures, in the house. She's always in the house. Plus, it's raining, so she's going to be all up on my business. Okay, so today we're going to talk about adulting because I see this so often. So I'll get into adulting in just a second. I do want to address something very specific, and it's how we go from something becoming a meme, which, if you're not familiar with memes, which pretty much everybody is that's doing anything involving social media now, memes is a term that actually encapsulates a psychological concept that was created by a man named Richard Dawkins. He's actually a world-renowned atheist, but he's also an evolutionary biologist, which is a very interesting thing about him. But anyway, he's a very interesting human being with a lot of interesting work. So he came up with memes, and memes is it's a information that is capable of going viral. So you don't need to be the individual to express it to another person. It has kind of a mind virus type of potential. It's a fascinating thing. But we typically know memes on the humor side of things, where you're like, oh, that's a funny meme, SpongeBob doing something to, whomever and whatever. And, whatever socially humorous at the time or interesting. So we come up with things that are funny in some degree, potentially in the beginning, but can move into justifications and the potential for violence later on, just simply because it started off in a way that we frame some things. Hey Joel, good to see you, my man. So we get into situations where it can change from its beginning stages where it is humorous and become something else. Think about the concept of calling someone a Karen. This is a newer thing, but what happens when we basically are packaging a sense of information and we turn it into something. So when we call somebody a Karen, immediately other people know. And at this stage of its growth and development in our society, we look at that statement as a comical perspective and immediately positions the person that's being claimed to be a Karen will fit a specific description. That particular description is going to be a female, predominantly is going to be Caucasian or light skin, more often than not. And what you end up with is she's likely wanting to speak to the manager or plead to authority, and causing somebody else hardship or try to take away something from somebody. But we often look at it from a humorous perspective, which is the Karen concept. Sure, yeah, she's probably going to want to talk to the manager, and people want to sit back and laugh, but it's a way of also kind of dissipating stress. I understand that. But what I want to really get to here is the potential of that growing into something else, because it does present the opportunity. I saw a shirt with this woman was wearing a shirt that says, "I wish a Karen would." That statement in itself is kind of a call to, I'm prepared for upset, frustration, violence, that kind of thing. But it can grow into those things. Today's video is not so much about the Karen concept. It's not about that. It's more or less using the Karen concept as illustrating the ideas of memes. So we use this idea, and there's a meme now that we call adulting. It's just an interesting thing. Our previous generations referred to it as something else. We just added a comical twist to it. So we're always talking about, I got to pay bills, I got to adult, I got to show up for work tomorrow at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever that is. And we tell ourselves, I'm just adulting. Here's the interesting thing about adulting. It also comes with perks. So everyone wants to frame adulting as if it's a bad thing. It's undesirable, or I would really like to, but I've got to do these responsibilities I have. And they don't take into consideration the benefits of adulting. The benefits of adulting, think about when you were a teenager and if you had parents that gave you restrictions, those restrictions are now lifted. If you want to have somebody over, you're adulting. If you want to have somebody over and have yourself a good time. I've noticed with a lot of my comments or insight, the information coming in, questions and requests for videos, I've noticed a lot of people center around the idea of sexuality. Well, guess what? Adulting also has sexuality. It has the fact of what do you do with your money? If you don't have somebody else telling you what to do with your money, that's adulting. If you want to go to Disneyland as an adult and stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, that's on you. But guess what? That is still adulting. You have your autonomy to make your decisions. Versus always using it in a framed negative connotation. It's like this idea of, and I'll get back to adulting in a second, but consider that when somebody says, I don't judge, they just lied to you. But here's the thing. We frame judging in a negative. But judging isn't negative. Judging is assessing the situation so you know how to align yourself with the situation. So when you go to court and you're going to be judged, the judge does what? Passes a judgment. But if there's two people sitting in court, the judge has to make a ruling. One person may not like it, the other one does. If you like me as a person, you've had to judge me to like me. You don't, you had to judge me not to. What the benefit of it is what's the value behind the statement, which is how do you qualify the people that you like and the people that you don't? You know, if you base it solely off the aesthetics, you're going to live a very superficial, shallow life. That's likely going to cause challenges. You're not going to feel well adjusted. You'll be frustrated with people often. Typically, we'll be seeing symptoms of relationships of turmoil, constant social media venting, things like that are symptoms. I'm not saying it's the exclusive symptoms or that there's no other variables of why you get to that point. Just saying that there's more to it. So when you lock language in a specific frame, you start to understand it in a way that when other people communicate with you, you may not understand what they're saying, even though you're using the same words. This also referred to as colloquialisms. Things that I like about colloquialisms, it doesn't mean that it's not going to become a definition. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be an understood term associated with the statement, which you can get into, like the Urban Dictionary has become actually really effective with this. There's a lot of things that are brought in with humor, but also do start to go into the canon of definitions that go beyond the social interactions that we have online and become something that starts to become agreed upon as being a new definition. So when it comes to adulting, if you frame it in a negative regularly, the descriptions of behaviors required to be an adult will start to become framed in a negative. Even though adulting isn't a negative, we've just made it a joke being negative. I really like adulting. There's times whenever it's not as much fun, but I award myself the benefits out of that. So if I want to, buy the flashy car, or if I want to stay out late, or I want to go to the bar, use an Uber, those are things that you get from adulting. It's not all work and no play, and it's not all play. It's a balanced variance. So when it comes to that, adulting has a lot of great values. So when you put it in a negative frame, you also put it into a perspective of the undesirable that I don't really want to do. If you want to have the privileges of being an adult, you have to adult. So you have to go out and adult a bit more. Do I have any comments here that's coming in? Didn't intend for this to be a very long one. Overall, it's more of there's a lot of different things. There's details hidden behind everything that we say. And the thing that the majority of us are experiencing is that we have a cross-referenced value in communication. You will typically approach a relationship that will be, I want this individual to have a specific element or responsibility in my life. It may be I want them to be responsible for caring for me emotionally as I am ready to do with them. There's so much. If you want to be able to have meaningful long-term relationships, communication is a fundamental value. You have to work on how you communicate. Even if you're using the same words, you have to understand the definitions to the words that are being used. Good example. Yeah, I agree with you too there, Joel. I agree. A good example is, do you think that flattery is intended to be a positive or a negative regardless of its context? So we'll do a thumbs up for a positive, we'll do a little cry face for a negative, and we'll see what your thoughts are. You think flattery is good or bad? by its definition. Anybody's jumping on Google right now to try to look up the definition, you're cheating. So, flattery is an intent to manipulate. It's not a positive thing. When you say you're flattering me, by its definition, you're actually saying, I caught you trying to manipulate me. I appreciate it. At the same time, though, you're not going to leverage on me. Now, if you say it in the colloquial sense, which is the non-definition sense of the agreed upon definition, you're going to think of it and be like, oh, that's so nice. It's so sweet. It's kind of like grabbing your partner. It absolutely could be sarcasm, Joel. But in its definition, it absolutely is intended to be manipulation. So it can be sarcasm in the sense if you want to use it that way. But I lost my train of thought there. Thank you, Joel. Yeah. Where was I? Oh, well. All right. I'll pick it back up in a second, or it'll catch me like Tourette's in the middle of the night, and I'll wake up at 3 o'clock and I'll scream out where I was at. So when it comes to adulting, let's realize that there are different variables about adulting that is fantastic. It actually does have a lot of benefit. The same thing with going with judgment. If you say to somebody that you don't judge, you aren't really clear about what you're saying. Because in America, depending on what region you're in, you'll have a definition that's associated with what you're saying. You'll have family trait values and definitions. You'll have your groups, your social groups that all agree on a specific thing, like slang, that kind of thing. But if you go across the pond over to, let's say, London or anywhere in England, they don't use the same terminology, and they often will go back and forth and laugh at each other's definitions, like a freeway. Oh, that's not what they call it there. Oh, they don't call your driveway that. It's one of the jokes that they have about us is that they're like, you park there. Why do you call it a driveway? You park there. There's quite a few of them, and I'm not that versed in it anymore. It's been over 10 years since I've been there. But given that it's joking and drinking things, like, you know what, I'm double fisting at the bar. You tell people you're double fisting in London, they're going to look at you like you've either a huge pervert or you have no idea what you're saying, because that's not what the definition is over there. So when we want to communicate better, we really do have to understand what words we're choosing and what that means to the other person that we're speaking with. So whenever you tell me you're going to go an adult, I'm thinking, are you going to go have a good time, do a little bit of partying, and not have to have your parents tell you you're doing wrong, unless you're not living on your own, and you're still living with your parents. But the benefits are you get a lot of autonomy out of adulting. So choose your words. Make sure you have conscious awareness of what you're saying, and that'll help create a better fundamentals for communication, which also lead to better understandings in relationship, which means that you're also more likely to establish long-term meaningful relationships, because miscommunication does not create a sabotage along the way. So if that's all you got for now, no more comments. I do appreciate the people that did comment in this and that showed up. Raph, you're a little late to the party, my man, but that's all right. Just know that choose your words wisely. They have a great deal of value. And be a little more forgiving. Sometimes people say whatever they can say as soon as they can say it, because they don't want to think that they're not a contribution to the conversation, and or they don't want to feel like they don't matter. Oh, so what's up, pup? Yeah, good to see you guys. All right, well, with that, that's it for today. I'll be bringing more fun little conversation pieces. If you didn't catch yesterday's video, I highly advise you go to Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. Check it out on YouTube. Yesterday was about requested topics, and I will be covering some of these soon. And if you didn't catch it, I'll tell you now, they were spicy. There were some interesting requests in that I typically don't talk about. The others are also, if anyone's interested in going more into more or less kind of the talk to me about politics, not necessarily tell you about politics. I'll probably be jumping on some of the subjects without necessarily overly polarizing anything, but possibly just giving a little bit more insight to, the way that I at least think and other people that have shared with me think about certain situations. that creates a lot of opportunities for us. So, all right, guys and gals, it's been a pleasure, and thanks for tuning in. And again, like I said, check into Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia on YouTube. Again, this is Chad Everett Broshears. I am the host of the show, as well as Chat with Chad. And by all means, please share this video with whoever's in your life that you feel this would actually help, or at least give some insight to, or with, or to start a dialogue. You can use these videos to preface a conversation that you may not necessarily know how to get into. I don't really have any skin in the game there. I just really do everything that I can to try to stand for humanity, and no other really crazy agendas. I just want to see us all come together. So, all right. Thank you so much. Enjoy. We'll talk to you soon.